Today I'm going to be showing you how to add a fully working cockpit with multiple displays to an FPV RC model plane. The aircraft I'm choosing for this project is the E-flite MALL M7. This method uses LCD screens, and while it's definitely the brightest option, the enclosed cockpit of the MALL M7 will no doubt help to shield any glare from the sun while flying. I'm going to be using two of the 1.5-inch LCD panels from FPV Toys, along with the cockpit gauge controller. It takes its data from iNav, so I'll be using it in conjunction with a Maytech F405 Wing V1. There's currently no standalone version of this type of thing. However, you can apparently take the data from any flight controller via MSP. It does take the speed from a GPS, so if you want that info, you'll need to have a GPS. I started this project over a year ago with a different standalone solution from RC Gauges, but sadly mine stopped working, and when I sent it back to the creator, Guy Pedrosa, he decided to steal my 200 plus euros, close all of his accounts, and he never returned the product to me or give me back my money. So if this guy ever crops up again somewhere, my advice is to never give him your business. I'm also aware that there's another solution just released at an even cheaper price than FPV Toys of around $85, but I'm concerned that his demo was shown at dusk, meaning that it might not be very good in bright sunlight, which is also a problem that RC Gauges also had. This one is not like that. The FPV Toy solution is still expensive at $100 for the Arduino controller, and the screens are $25 each. However, it's so much more capable than the rest that's out there. I did find the screens on AliExpress for just a couple of dollars, so there is a way to make it cheaper. If you don't mind a bit of soldering, the 1.5-inch screens require a 100 ohm resistor soldering to them. I chose to do this because the default screens come with a bulky connector that protrudes out of the back of the screens, which is convenient to connect everything together, but it gets in the way of a compact install. If you want to do this, then it's worth asking Jeff from FPV Toys to send screens without the connector for a little extra work. I started off by carefully removing the front windows using a Stanley knife. This left a little bit of a mess, so I 3D printed some window supports kindly provided by Anthony Brown and then glued them in place to hide up the mess. I then unscrewed the pilot, and this is quite tricky. So there's two screws that go through a wooden plank halfway through the fuselage. You have to pull the pilot off and then push the screws below the wooden plank. Really tricky with the limited space, but it is doable. I then took some measurements using a ruler inside the cockpit, and by trial and error I mapped out the shape of the dash and recreated it in Tinkercad, leaving clip-in holes matching the size of the two screens and a couple of fake gauges from a website called Cockpit. I used a matte grey filament off Amazon and printed on my Creality Simoon V1 Pro 3D printer. I had to cut a hole in the foam of the dashboard so the cables from the screens could feed through to the front, where I've got the Arduino controller and the multiple screen connector. I bought a very long 4-pin Arduino connector and fished it from the front to the back where I've installed the flight controller. I had to swap a couple of the cables round so that it matched the pins on the Maytech flight controller, but by doing that on the cable side, I could connect everything via pins on the spare 5-volt UART 5 of the flight controller, so there's no further soldering required. So if you have a model that's got an iNav flight controller installed and set up already, then all you need to do is just sort this one cable out to the flight controller and route your screens and wires through. Jeff from FPV Toys is always updating the firmware to add new features and improvements, so it's best to connect the Arduino board to your computer and download the latest firmware and update it via the Teensy loader. You can then configure the screens exactly as you like via a command line using the Terra app. This can be a little tricky compared to other offerings, but the amount of choice is so much more. There's various different types of displays and gauges to customize, which can be flipped, rotated, mirrored and sized differently. There's different styles, so you've got World War II type of gauges, and you've even got fighter pilot type of gauges as well. You can change the units or which RC channel you want to set up to change the screens. There's even a custom startup screen. If you want to get really nerdy, you can input custom airfields and waypoints on a map and then use an RC channel to zoom in and out. It even has VOR and ILS capabilities, which is pretty good for this price point. I've set up an RC channel to simply just switch the different displays on each screen. I've done this by setting up a single channel on my radio on 2 switches, one with a weight of 60 and another with a weight of 40, and that seems to work fine. I decided that as well as a pan and tilt for FPV head tracking, I wanted to be able to also move the camera back and forth due to the limited view in the mall cockpit. And in order to get the screens in focus, the camera would need to be set further back in the fuselage, which might not be great for landing and taking off in terms of the view. I used an MG180 servo, and then again in Tinkercad I designed a linear actuator to run along a high precision slide plate so that there was no play in the system that could cause jello in the camera, and that's worked really well. I did originally try a more simplistic design, but I wasn't happy with the tolerance. The pan and tilt system is called the bag gimbal by MotionSick, and I use some brass threaded inserts which you heat up with a soldering iron and melt into the 3D plastic, and that works really well. I decided to use the OG DJI Air Unit for many reasons. The first one being that it doesn't need any extra cooling other than the air coming through the front windows. Everyone in our flying club is also using the O2 system, and we have around 5 pilots flying with it, and that means that we can all fly together, unlike if we were mixing between O3 and O4, we would have limited channels and it's just more complicated. I also don't think O3 and O4 adds anything when it comes to FPV head tracking. You've got better resolution, but the dynamic range on the DJI Air Unit original is so much better, and if we're dealing with LCDs that have got varying sort of dynamic light and then the light coming, you know, from out of the windows, then this is the best camera for the job. The V1 and V2 goggles are just so much more comfortable to sit with for long periods of time, which you will get when flying FPV with a plane, because the flight time on this is going to be, you know, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes depending on how much throttle that you use. I tried the N3 goggles, but because they're using sort of like a single display, I keep going cross-eyed with them. And I just find that the Goggles 2, the Integra, the Goggles 3, they're just so uncomfortable on my face. You can get different foam, but then you can't see the image as clear, whereas the V1 and V2 goggles, you get a brilliantly clear image, a massive screen. It's just a better goggle that suits me. And if you want to know how I set up a wireless head tracker with my V1/V2 DJI goggle, then I will put a link in the video description, because I'm still using that same system and it works brilliantly. Lastly, I fed all of the wires from the pan, tilt, slide and air unit down the small gap in the cockpit, which runs down the middle of the plane, using servo extension wires to make sure that they reach the flight controller. I've also got the GPS sitting on the tail. It's not a build for the faint-hearted, but it gives fantastic results, and that is the great thing about head tracking FPV with a plane. All planes fly slightly differently, and the build is slightly different every time, and the results are slightly different every time, so it's just always exciting to do this kind of thing. And I'll see if I can link in the video description the 3D printed parts that I've either used or designed myself. Okay, well, proper clear skies tonight, no wind. Let's give this guy a go. Just trying to figure out what to actually have on my dash. I think this is good. I do like the radar on the second screen. So if I flick one of my switches, so 2 switches, 1 channel, one set at 40% and one set at 60 for the gains. So the one for 60 selects the screen, that goes red. I do like that one. Let's keep it with the dials for now. And flip back to that one. And I can change that one too. See all the dials clearly, even when the sun is out, thanks to the sort of cover that this plane provides. And I can see the numbers clearly too. Then if I want, I can get a bit closer for my takeoff and landings. So we have got their speed, and we've got altitude in feet. Okay, I've got everything set up, so I've got flaps too, but not sure I'm going to be trying those. Let's taxi out. It's going to be interesting having the sun right there. So this plane has been sat for a year, so the windscreen needs a clean, needs a proper polish. Okay, let's go for a takeoff. And we are airborne. I can shift the camera forward a little bit. See my dials working there, absolutely fantastic. Wow, it is really calm. Horizon is working nicely. Even facing the sun, which is low on the horizon. It's about 7 p.m. here. That is absolutely rock solid. Let's see what the horizon does in a roll. That definitely works, doesn't it? This pan servo is a little bit jerky, and it's usually smoother than this. So need to get onto motion sick. Just there. I like how I can see the wheel just slowly moving there. I want to see what happens in a loop, because one of the things that we struggle with RC planes and doing FPV is that they often skew out of loops, but hopefully with this I'll be able to see. Yeah, I can, that's brilliant. It goes all the way around too. Some of them don't, they sort of don't like being upside down and sort of try and level themselves out. So Jeff, the maker of this dial, has done a great job there in ensuring that it's realistic. It does have a little bit of a jerk to it, like the frames per second on this dial here. It's using Arduino, and it's all been drawn in Arduino as well. So the one from RC Gauges, it used a SD card for all of the bitmaps. But this one is all running off the Arduino. But it works good enough. I mean, I can see everything here. A speed 33, The height, I think, is 180 feet there, is it? So I can see 160 for sure. Let's turn around here. So it's getting all that info off iNav, off the GPS. Fantastic. Just what I wanted this for. Oh, there we go, yeah, 220, you can see that nice and clear. That's with the camera as far back as it will go. And you can still kind of read what it says even close up, but it gets blurry. So yeah, see there, 240 feet and 35. I need to maybe change it. I think that's in knots rather than miles per hour. That's hands off there. So it's a nice flying model. It's a little bit nose heavy because of everything that's gone into it. Needs a little bit of tail weight. But apart from that, it's pretty hands off. I'm glad I cut these windows out here because you can see out of this front dash, but it's distorted and blurry and dusty. And then when I turn into the sun, you can really see all sort of the particles and dust and dirt. It's been sat in the garage. So I've got a 3,200 milliamp hour battery. I think if I put in, say, a 2,800 milliamp hour 4S battery, then the balance will be perfect. So it's only off a tiny bit despite all of this stuff that's gone in. I can look all the way around, have a look at my air unit, check the antennas are still on. The view is limited out of this thing, but it would be in the full size, and that's the idea really. You can go two ways when it comes to FPV with a plane, as you can stick the camera on top and get a great view, or you can do this. I can hear someone next to me. Who's there?
There's no one here at all, Andy.
Oh,
I swear.
am I talking, have I gone that crazy that I'm talking to myself?
You're stuck in your own VR, kid.
Yeah, I am. Is this reality? Which one's the human?
I ain't saying.
Yeah.
This is an amazing evening, isn't it?
It's absolutely. I was just saying, I was hands off and the thing's just not. It's on absolute rails.
You can't buy an evening like this.
No. That's why I just had to come here. There you go. That's hands off. Just let go. It's unbelievable. I mean, I could probably, I probably shouldn't, but I could probably change my dials here. Yeah. I should probably carry on flying the plane. What's my battery doing? Okay, so that's 9 minutes. I'm gonna leave it safe there and come in for a landing. Move my camera slightly forward, see if that helps. I think so. Okay, come low on the throttle, bring it round, bring it round. Absolutely no wobble or jello on this. which I'm amazed that was more fluke than anything, but I did design it that way. There's a runway out here somewhere. There it is. Okay, yeah, it sinks there. I have to come in on the throttle, drop the throttle, bit of a bounce. There we go. And there we go. Move my camera back a bit. Great stuff.